One of the things that often come up in journalism training in different parts of the Pacific has to do with interviewing, especially interviewing people in authority from the Pacific Islands. And there is an assumption that it is very difficult to interview them, and that often the journalists have a difficult time trying to get through. And then, because of that, there's also another assumption, and that is that Pacific Island people, or at least those that are in authority or leaders, because of the complexities of their culture, very, very difficult to interview them. Uh, in fact, one of the key assumptions is because they you are unable to actually interview them directly, to ask them direct questions. And so usually the non-Pacific Island journalists, or especially the Western journalists, have a very difficult time trying to get through to Pacific Island leaders, and they are deemed very rude, confrontational, and so on. I want to make a comment on this, and that is the fact that I think most journalists that fly into the Pacific and interview leaders already have within the framework of their thinking that the Pacific Island leaders have something to hide, and they are not open to sharing the truth, and that's why they react to the perceived rudeness by the journalist. My thinking is that many of the assumptions are not only wrong, they are actually perceptions that are in the journalist's own mind. I've worked in the Pacific for over 20 years and have interviewed leaders, prime ministers, people in our own royal family, and I find no difficulty at all in posing questions to them and getting the kind of information that I needed to get from them. Definitely one of the things that is counterproductive in terms of conducting an interview with anybody in authority is that if we use the methodology of being confrontational, for some reason the Western journalists and the journalism that is often taught at our journalism school is that to be able to be effective, to get to the truth when you're interviewing somebody, you have to be confrontative. In other words, you've got be harsh, you've got poke things, questions, and get to the bottom line of it. And when you watch interviews that are done in television or in radio or even in newspapers, you can't blame often the reaction that comes from leadership, because the journalist comes in there with a preconceived idea, a prejudice, so to speak, and their approach, therefore, is that of confrontation. Definitely, the leaders in the Pacific and most of our authority structure in the Pacific are authoritarian. In other words, many of the kind of commands or edicts or things that are said comes from top down. And when a journalist comes and assumes that kind of position, a top-down in the interview, then definitely it's counterproductive when you're talking to a chief or a king or a prime minister, because you're assuming a position of superiority by being very confronting and asking them questions from a top-down position. So how do we do this? I have found it very, very simple, to be very natural. Leaders or people in authority, they want to share. They want to share their thinking. They want to share their feelings. But you have to come alongside them and completely lay aside all confrontation and really try to be like a friend, so to speak, like on their side, and try to get them to share what they really think, what they know, things that has to do with the the particular subject matter that you are probing, it is absolutely not rude to ask questions that may be, in our thinking, that may be questions that the leader or the person in authority uh, may feel uncomfortable answering those questions. It's not what you ask, but how you ask, how you go about it, how you talk to the person. And so it is important. I think this is very, very important as we think about the training Pacific Island journalists, interviewing or asking questions or getting to the bottom of a matter. Uh, it's very important. It's not just what you ask, it's how you ask it. And how you ask it is fundamental to being able to get at the truth of a matter, being able to come alongside the leader and be exploratory, wanting to know what he really thinks, what he feels, why he said what he said, or why the government did what they did. And so these are, to me, very important things. There's a lot more that we need to understand and study in culture and how we can approach our subjects, or particularly people who we interview, in a culturally appropriate manner. If we journalists are seeking for the truth, if we're seeking for the facts of a matter, it is very important for us to learn and to know how we go about it, rather than employing a particular methodology or a particular way we do things that we import from another culture or from the way we deal with it in another situation and putting it in this situation. So therefore, for the Pacific Island journalists or the Pacific journalists, it's very important to understand and know your culture. And it's important to really put on a completely different hat and a heart when we approach Pacific people to interview or to ask questions about a matter. Thank you very much. This is Kalafi Moala giving a commentary here for Masali McKinnon of the Pasima Pacific Trainer. Thank you.